Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our full moon report for August 2023. I'm here with Adrienne Gibson from Jess Kieran Astrology and Mila from the Moonlight Soul. And again, I'm Makayla from Scenic Root Astrology. We're here to talk about the Aquarius full moon that's happening on August 1st, tomorrow, 2023. It's a very interesting way to kick off the month of August with a full moon right in front of us. So I guess we're just going to get right into it unless anybody has any updates they want to talk about. You good to go?
Nope, I'm ready.
Good to go?
Let's
Awesome.
pull up that chart.
Okay. So I'm going to pull it up here. It's the Aquarius full moon we've got going on. So for anybody who has any planets in the fixed signs, around within a 10-degree orb of 9 degrees, Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, or Taurus, this is obviously going to affect you a bit more by a conjunction, opposition, or square. And, right off the bat, looking at this full moon, we've got unexpected events happening. We've got a full moon in a sign that deals with humanity, with taking things from a higher perspective, changing the pattern, if you will. And also what all full moons bring is an illumination of some sort, and perhaps even an illumination of like what your heart's desire is, considering the sun is in Leo right now. And when I first looked at this full moon this morning, actually, when I woke up, I was looking at the ruler of the moon, which is going to be in Aquarius, which is going to be Uranus in Taurus. And that Uranus is forming a square to Venus retrograde, which is a big cycle that we're actually going through as well. So I think on the backdrop, a lot of people are experiencing and dealing with situations when it comes to love and money and what they value. And those are becoming big shifts for people under this summer. And, Venus retrograde to me is bringing up a lot of deep inner look at like what is important to you when it comes to relationships and when it comes to finances. And those tend to be really major important factors in life, right? Sometimes like the top ones are, health, family, money, and relationships, right? The top factors like what we deal with as humans living, in this earth school right now. And so this was a really interesting full moon for me because it's almost like preparing you on how you can engage yourself when Venus goes direct in October, like how you're going to engage yourself when you're moving forward in those dynamics in your life. And like Aquarius does, is it brings things from the higher mind. It extracts information from the higher realm, the higher mind, or an objective point of view. And you can be a little more detached under the Aquarian realm, which is needed sometimes when we get so submersed, which we're coming out of, so submersed in emotions, right? We finally let go of the South Node in Scorpio, where we were navigating through a lot of difficulty when it came to emotional and psychological attachments. And now we're in this new nodal era with the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra. And for the next 18 months, it's like our relationships on a big general scale are being up for review. And so it's kind of nice, in my opinion, to go into the month of August with this full moon that's not so emotionally attached. It's more detached, which I think can really structure people or set them up in a way for them to take a step back and to create some space in your life from everything that's going on so that you can provide some type of strategy going forward. What do you two think?
Well, I definitely feel like the detachment is necessary after this last incredibly emotional period of time. I think that one of the things that I've noticed with this moon is this shift of the nodes is really big, where we are really reviewing the way we've dealt with other people. And with Venus in Leo, now we are really looking at our own needs and the way that we express our needs, and the way that we have expressed our needs through other people in the past, coming from the 29-degree mark, now at 28, and that we're really focusing more on our inner needs to be able to express ourselves, so that as we move forward, we are aligning our needs to what it is that we want to do in our future. And then we'll be adjusting our relationships accordingly.
Absolutely. And I think Venus definitely plays a really big role, because she's the ruler of the South Node. So we are definitely going over a lot of things. And I just wanted to bring us back to the new moon in Aquarius that happened on January 21st, actually. And what is very interesting about the new moon Aquarius was that it happened on 1 degree, new beginning. Now this one is happening on 9 degrees, the culmination of something. So I feel that the numerology definitely plays a big role this year, especially with all these 0 degrees, 1 degrees, 29 degrees, and all these squares that we had between Pluto and the nodes becoming exact at 29 degrees. This last one was at 28 and some change. But I just really feel that a lot of things got really concepted in the springtime, late winter, springtime, and now we are in the process of activation. So things are really starting to change. And just past week, we had the 3 exact square between Pluto and the nodes, everything pointing to the South Node. During the first one of them, Venus already was in retrograde. So this is definitely reassessing, reevaluating, stepping back in the past in a way, and really thinking about what is holding us back that we were projected onto. And I can definitely attest, even from my experience with my clients, because I seem to attract clients with the similar themes to what is going on in the sky at the moment. And there is so much of that happening right now, that the conditioning of actually realizing that where did this come from? Is this even mine? And just the fact that this full moon is squared by Jupiter, and Jupiter is ruled by Venus retrograde. So it's just so many breadcrumbs, and everything is definitely pointing us back to reevaluate before we step forward. So this full moon in Aquarius is definitely highlighting to us what needs to be done in order for us to move forward, because the time is ripe. The time is up now with the North Node in Aries.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, Venus is going to be really important as we're navigating with this nodal shift over the next 18 months, which is super fun because who doesn't love to talk about love and money? But on a large scale too, it can be really difficult because those are the things that can, affect us the most. And we're approaching this Venus star point, which is going to initiate, and the Venus star point is on August 13th. And it's an inferior conjunction because Venus is going to be retrograde. So it's going to be inside between the sun and the earth. And this is when the Venus and sun make a conjunction and form a new pattern. So it's a new 8-year cycle that's being birthed. And essentially we still have Venus in this giant yod right here with Pluto and Neptune. And it's going to, again, make that exact node in a few weeks when Venus goes direct, okay, and goes back into that 27, 28 degree. So right now, Venus is kind of like retrograding, like breaking up that yod, but we've experienced it to some degree where if people have felt a shift within their values, and like what's really been like important to them up until now is just changing, and maybe they're claiming back their own empowerment, or like what they love essentially is just different and it's not the same anymore, because in a way Neptune is forming and in conjunct where it's trying to dissolve some meaning to things that's once been a part of your life. And then Pluto has also been destroying the very last pits of our Capricorn structures in our life where things aren't going to be the same moving forward. And for me internally, I have really noticed a shift within myself where I'm not the same person I was 8 years ago. And the things that held meaning to me are no longer priorities to me anymore. And it can feel weird to dip out of that, like, because you feel like you're just kind of when a caterpillar like forms into a butterfly, like you're shedding essentially, and it feels really weird to go into that new direction. And I think this might be, you know, an experience for a lot of people with that North Node in Aries too, is like, okay, yes, like Venus, South Node ruler of Venus, right, is going to bring up all these past relationship dynamics, karmic relationship dynamics. Doesn't mean they have to go, doesn't mean that they have to like completely be eradicated from your life, but know that you do want to make space for some new stuff to come in. And like Aries does, it's kind of like abrupt and a little insecure when it does come in because it's so fresh and new.
Yeah,
for
I would
sure.
agree that we don't really have to make very radical changes in our relationships, but I think that this moon is asking us to step back a little bit, just to give ourselves the space to be able to allow that newness to come in and really make sure that moving forward, our relationships are more balanced, where our needs are being met. Whereas typically through our culture, we've been taught to, you know, give our power away to the other person, the other, you know, the society at large, and put our own needs secondary. And I think that this North Node, it pointing to Aries, is now is the time really to determine what it is that we want and be able to step forward. I think that the Saturn retrograde, which is taking away these old structures, is helping to dissolve this outer authority that we've been following in these outer relationships. And that as we are dissolving those outer structures, and, you know, Saturn being retrograde, we're really stepping into our own authority. Where can we be our own boss and decide? And then, and that helps this Aries North Node, because now we have the agency to move forward in the way that we want to, and be able to adjust the way that we're relating to other people, making sure that our needs and our direction, what we feel from our hearts, is being focused on going forward, which is a big shift from what we've been taught in the past. And so it can be a little bit uncomfortable. We've got Chiron retrograde conjunct the North Node, which is an uncomfortability of doing that. You know, when we've made choices toward ourselves in the past, we're labeled as selfish, or we're not thinking, or we're, you know, we're not thinking about other people's needs. But what that does is lead us to not thinking of our needs at all. And so I think that this North Node Chiron conjunction is suggesting that, yes, it is uncomfortable because we haven't done it really. We've not been trained to do it. But we need to step in that direction anyway, because ultimately it will achieve a balance between ourselves and the people that we relate with going forward.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say that, well, the ruler Mars, the ruler of the North Node, and the ruler of Chiron Mars is actually in Virgo, and the Mars's ruler, Mercury, has just moved into Virgo a couple of days ago, 3 days ago. So there is no coincidence that Mercury is the ruler of the North Node. That's quite a mouthful, but because Mars is the ruler of the North Node, Mars is in the sign ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in a sign of its exaltation by traditional astrology. Virgo, Mercury rules both Virgo and Gemini, but they say Mercury in Virgo is in exaltation. So Mercury is actually in a closing phase with Mars. So Mercury has made a conjunction to Venus last week. Venus was already retrograde, so they, you know, exchange this information that Venus was saying, okay, Mercury, listen, you know, I have to go and figure it out, because there was a case of mistaken identity, you know, since the last lunation, which was the full moon in Cancer, where we had the nodal shifts happening shortly after when we last met. Venus maybe realized that, well, this is not who I am. This is what I was projected onto that I was. And now there was a closing cycle between Venus and Mercury. So Mercury passed on information to Venus, Venus passed on information to Mercury, Mercury is the rule of Mars, which is the rule of North Node. So that is all affecting us in this going forward direction. Now Mercury is catching up with Mars, but they're actually not going to conjunct, because Mars is going to move into the sign of Libra and Mercury will station retrograde. So I actually checked this out for my video and the last video I recorded, and they're not going to have a conjunction until one day after the last eclipse in the sign of Taurus, which again to me is very interesting, how there is so much of a culmination going on at the moment, and at the same time we're starting to hedge towards this new direction already, but there is so much that needs to be resolved first. And I feel, just as you, Adrienne, said, that this closing phase between the North Node and Chiron is a big key, because Chiron is the key and is ruled by the rule of the North Node, because exactly as you mentioned, and this is, again, something I'm coming across almost with every single reading I do, this conditioning of the Pisces age, which we were being made to feel that we are something wrong with us. We are sinful for having needs and for needing or wanting what we want. But I always say to my clients, if universe, God, whatever you call it, whatever you call it, doesn't matter. Listen, not about the labels. If it wanted 8 billion people with the same blueprint, what would be the point for there to be 8 billion people? We are all an expression of the source, and the source is learning by individuation, which is this full moon in Aquarius. So we were not born to be copy-paste conditioned all in the same way, because we are all a unique expression. And I feel that Chiron going retrograde through the sign of Aries, this is what Chiron in Aries has been working on since it's been there, 2019, 2018-19, because Chiron is trying to help us to understand that, unfortunately, the past is gone. Like, it's not going to get it much further with Saturn being in Pisces. It's not going to get it much further. There is certain values we are keeping, because it's not all redundant and let's scrap it all off. But there is this desire, soul's desire for moving into new direction. And we cannot stay the same people doing exactly the same way everything and relating in the same way to start a new life. Is impossible. Even Joe Dispenza say, to create a new reality, you need to become a new personality. And when you change your belief system, everything will change. So again, it's not coincidence that Jupiter is the one squaring this full moon, because again, it's saying, what do you believe about yourself? Jupiter in Taurus, literally, you are your own self-study case for the upcoming year, until Jupiter conjuncts Neptune in April next year. So I feel that everything is happening, like, already, we are in a season where there is a lot of young energy, but there is still this need for reassessing, reevaluating, and changing what needs changing. And like you, Makayla, said, it doesn't mean to scrap everything off and just dump all people from your life, but perhaps learn to set up boundaries, perhaps speak for yourself, be able to self-express. Because if you don't, people are not telepathic just yet. So a lot of people might not even know.
Mm-hmm. Adrienne, you felt like you had something to say.
Well, I agree with that for sure. And I think that this moon in Aquarius is really pointing toward us really becoming our true selves, that with the North Node, that we 8 billion of us, that we can't all be the same, and we're not all the same. Even though we've been all conditioned to be so similar, that when we try to step out into that unique, we get all of these eyebrows raised, or but I think we should do it anyway, because what will make the change, and I think I said this in a couple of our other videos, what will make the change is the individuals. Each of us has to step into our own selves. And I think that this is the setup for that. That as we move forward into Aquarius, when Pluto moves into Aquarius, that's what we'll all be doing. And the North Node in Aries is saying, okay, it's time to take that new direction. What is spontaneous and instinctual within you to do, even though it is different from the way we have related to other people in the past. And like you said, Mila, that we don't, it's not that we want to lose all of our relationships. We can't just do that. We all have to relate to each other, but we can relate differently. And that differentness will be aligned with how we come into our own selves. and how we, and this is why I think that Venus is retrograde in Leo, is that we are returning into our own selves, discovering what is truly in our hearts, and really making that push forward with the North Node. And yeah.
You know, like Jeffrey Wolfgreen talks about in his Pluto 1 book too, when he talks about the Pluto and Aquarius souls. And to me, this full moon is a nice little taste, because again, like Mila said, we had when you look at the lunar family with this association, the new moon began at the beginning of this year. No, 2022, right? January 1st, 2022. And so essentially, the full moon in Aquarius now illuminating what your unique individual side of your, soul is. If it's weird, if it's eccentric, right? If it's different than what you're used to and how you're showing up and relating to other people, it's probably going to create some type of change, because like Jeffrey Wolfgreen talks about, you become on the fringe of the society and you become outskirts. And at first you can feel alienated and ostracized and like you don't fit in anymore, and it's kind of lonely, right? It's kind of like that first experience of like, well, who do I belong to, right? Where are my tribes? Where are my people? But what happens is, when you start to step into your own power, you start to attract the people who are similar like you, or even better, which I think is incredible under this full moon, you become a leader and an agent of that change, and then other people get the courage to follow. And to me, this is really an activation of that Leo Aquarius axis that I would encourage people to step in and empower themselves with. Like, big or small, it doesn't matter, right? She's like, you've got this unique gift, right? I've got a comedian friend who has an Aries moon, Taurus rising, who's being really activated right now by certain transits, right? And she's got a really unique gift with comedy. And she talks about some stuff that's very taboo that nobody's ever talking about, but it's hilarious and people laugh. And I'm like, you got to step into this power right now and bring it forth, because this is what people resonate with. They just aren't saying it, but you'll say it. And, that ruler of the North Node is also forming a trine to Jupiter. So this is sweet. This is like Jupiter always, in my opinion, will give you a gift if you take a huge leap and a huge chance. And will there be probably adjustments for my little predictive brain with the astrology going on? For sure, right? Like, you might have to make some adjustments on that path, but like, that's basically life in general anyway. And we've also got Mercury, and it's going into its shadow, because we've got this whole Mercury retrograde period coming up, where you'll just be like revisiting and reviewing things and stuff. And so sometimes under Aquarius, like, things can feel really accelerated and like really fast because our nervous system is getting stimulated, especially under a full moon. But it doesn't mean that it has to happen erratically like that either. And so, like, step-by-step process with the Mars and Virgo, working on perfecting your craft is important, being discerning and being able to like pick apart all the details, if you will, like as you're moving forward and as you're taking new steps into like embracing your authenticity.
Yeah, and actually, I just want to piggyback on that, because that was what I was thinking too, that people maybe feel so much pressure on themselves because they feel, oh, I have to figure it out in one day, but exactly, like the rule of the North Node, Mars is in Virgo, and it has been there when the node shifted, which means that this process of learning and adjusting, this Virgo, gathering information, discerning, and making new choices under all circumstances, this is how we're gonna get there, because we are facing something that is very, very new, very, very unique, very Aquarian, and it's not like we have some playbook from the past that is preparing us for exactly what's coming, because nothing was ever in the sky exactly the same way it is now. Because even when Pluto was in Aquarius last time during revolutions, the other places, planets were in different places. So this requires like this process of learning and adjusting and observing. And Mars is still in opposition with Saturn, and Mercury is in the exact opposition with Saturn. So that's again telling us that, well, the structure you believe, the definition of reality you were attuned to before, is dissolving. It no longer holds a meaning. It's just it just fulfilled its cycle. There is nothing wrong with it, but it fulfilled its cycle. This is again what I also mentioned to my clients, that there were lifetimes where this served us. These were lifetimes where we wanted to have this experience on a soul level, to have someone else to make the decisions for us, to maybe feel disempowered, to maybe have less of an options. But that time is culminating now, and there is no right and wrong. It's not like we're going into something better or worse. It just is different because the soul wants to evolve and expand. And that's why I feel this Mercury in opposition with Saturn is saying, well, we just need to figure it out step by step. Virgo, we don't know the whole picture, and it's all mutable signs, which is that we just have to be in this continuous state of flow. And I feel really, especially with this full moon in Aquarius, what is in resonance with you? What is in resonance with your heart? What is your heart telling you? And this is also what I feel some of the information Mercury passed on to Venus during their conjunction last week, because Mercury is the bridge. So it was bridging the ego mind and the heart, which is the gateway to higher self. And each has function. The only problem is when ego takes over and completely ignores the higher self and say, don't listen to anything else, just listen to your brain. But everything has a function. So as long as the two are in alignment, we're good to go, because ego is keeping us protected. And obviously, there is certain things we need to take out of the database to survive and stuff, but we're going further. We are transcending that reality. And for that, we need to, maybe learn new skills. Maybe we need to learn things from a different vantage point because of the mutable energy, that we are going into uncharted territory, and it requires discernment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a lack of air in this chart as well. As you can see, like the only air placement is basically the node and the moon. And so I feel it might be hard for people to communicate essentially what this heart opening is like revealing, right? How this like Aquarius full moon is like opening up the heart chest and being like, this is what you value. This is what you're really like, your soul's wanting to head towards. And it's immediately bringing up this scenario that my photographer for the new project that I'm working on, and Adrienne, I shared this with you on the side already, but I'll share it for the group because I just thought that it was an amazing way to work with the current transits. And so my photographer is a yoga teacher, and there's a lot of breakups happening, right? So if like people are going through relationship changes, like it is very significant with the current astrology and the transits. And she broke up with this individual in a very compassionate way, and they had a talk, and they had hugs and cries and so forth. But she also was super hyper attuned and aware, which is a total Aquarius thing, that she understood that this human wasn't going to feel safe in his body essentially after they would separate, like the emotions kind of all spiraling and what you can hold in your body. And so she actually suggested that they do somersaults together after they had their talk. And so they were basically doing front rolls in the front yard on the ground so that they could both feel secure and safe in their body by physically rolling on the ground. And I just thought that that was such an amazing way to communicate without actually speaking. Right.
Yeah.
And Adrienne, you're a yoga teacher, so you definitely understand like this connection to the body, and sometimes how, the astrology, like we can lack certain elements that makes it hard for us to communicate, but we don't have to essentially communicate what we're feeling through like verbal, anything verbal. And so like connecting like with our psychic gifts, for instance, like Mila, you were talking about like the higher mind and the heart, that also takes an awareness of like your physical body of some sort. And we have a lot of earth, we have a lot of water, and a lot of fire. And so there can be all this manifestation happening in your body energetically in your temple that can be revealed under this Aquarius full moon, that can be shocking and sudden, and you don't really know how to like deal with all the frequencies like moving through you. And so essentially like getting into your earthly bodily realm could help navigate and move through like what's erupting essentially under this full moon.
Yeah, and I think that it's no accident that there's so much fire going on in the chart. I don't think it's a time for thinking about it yet. We're culminating the ways of thinking, but while we're in our bodies, we're going to be putting out action. You know, it's almost like learning by doing. The thoughts will come once we've start moving in the direction that we need to go. But yeah, I just see a lot of action in making those moves forward, discovering, you know, who we are in a very spontaneous and instinctual way. I mean, we haven't really had the opportunity to do that. And, you know, you were talking about earlier, Makayla, about how the people on the fringe may feel alienated at a time, but it's those fringe, the way I like to think about it is like an amoeba, the way that the very edges are what make the move forward. And then the rest of the energy follows and creates a new direction. And I feel like that about Aquarius. It's going to require, it's not the whole group that creates change. It's those unique individuals that make a move, and people see that. Now you're the role model, and other people start going in that direction or feel safe enough to step into a direction of their own. They're like, oh, well, they did that. Maybe I can go and do this. And I think that ultimately, if 8 billion people are doing that, we're really going to see some change coming forward.
Yeah, I feel like right now it's all about like baby steps, you know, like when a child is learning, so they just try it once, they try it twice, and then eventually they master, which is also like with this Virgo, you try and you master it. But it's like, you know, there is so much, like you said, this fire and the earth and the water. So like it's more instinctual, I feel, that like, you know, like you, Makayla, say, it's not so much of a logical. There is no really logic behind this, you know, because Aquarius, it's transcended, like it's beyond the logical thinking, you know. It's like where Mercury is exalted by the modern astrology, so this is going beyond to what we can understand with our mental capacity. So we really, like, at the moment I feel like it's going more like let's just make it simple. Let's just feel what you feel is the right thing for you. Don't try to analyze it and talk yourself out of it and go into crisis, you know, like analysis paralyzes. Because exactly, there is like this opposition, and it just requires us to actually start identifying reality in a new way, because the old way of identifying is not supporting us. And also my theory is the majority of what we were being told about this life and reality is inverted. I always even say to my clients that try to flip what you were being said upside down on its head, and then you come closer to the truth. Because if everything we were being taught was actually truth and serving us, why would the world will be in a state we are at, you know? Which is like we are not being taught how to be independent, think for yourself, speak for yourself, find your own way, you know, take care, you know, like regulate your emotion, like learn how to, you know, grow your own food and stuff. We were not learn anything that is important. We were just being taught how to become dependent on a system and externalize our power and always go to the expert. And I'm like, how can anybody else know you better than yourself? So I really feel that's absolutely true. Like, it's literally, in a sense, it's like trying to like have a clean slate, you know, clean slate, like forget everything you were being told and just tune into yourself again, and just go by your instincts, go by your emotion, go by whatever, you know, just go and sit in the grass and see what comes to you. Don't try to find it in a book, because this is not like, eventually, obviously, we need data and information, but I don't think like at the moment that's the go-to, you know, is the first thing you go to. Is like, okay, let me make my research. Like, no, first, you know, what you feel, you know, what is driving you, what is this instinctual desire. And yeah, you know, like with the trine between Jupiter in Taurus and Mars in Mercury, and Jupiter being ruled by Venus retrograde, you know, like we are trying to learn the new things about ourselves. Because if what we thought before was who we were, and now we realize that wasn't who we are, because look at the reality we created. Like, not so many people are happy with what they have going on in their lives. So now Venus is going retrograde, because she's saying, okay, if I'm changing the identification, the way I see myself, that means my purpose is changing. What makes me happy is changing. And then that's supporting, you know, there is this support between Jupiter and, you know, I mean, they are making square. They will be making another two squares between Jupiter and Venus. There was already one square. There will be two more squares, you know, Venus retrograde, and then going forward again. But this is practically what it's saying. The more Venus is reevaluating what makes me happy, what makes my heart sing, how do I want to show up in the world in my Leo, colors, the more this Jupiter being in Taurus is actually working on helping us to understand ourselves on a deeper level, because Jupiter is like the higher mind, it's like the philosopher. So like the truth we're learning about ourselves. And also between Venus and Chiron, there are 3 trines. There was already 1, there'll be 2 more. And this is, again, you see how all these planets are communicating with each other, supporting the same energy, the same process, which is literally breaking through out of the mold that they've been plastered on us, that the true who you are is hiding underneath. But you need to break all these layers of conditioning to get there. So it's not like you even learning about yourself, you uncovering who you are by stripping off the conditioning, the projections, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I feel, that this new moon in Aquarius, sorry, I don't know why I keep saying new moon, full moon in Aquarius is definitely trying to help us to identify that if you want to become individuated and free, there is all these things that need to happen first, because there is all these layers of conditioning that's keeping us where we are.
Yeah. And one of those things is, I think, really important is the Jupiter function here being square to the sun and trying to Mars, that we really need to believe that we can be self-sufficient, that we can get our own needs met. And Pluto being in Capricorn retrograde is showing us that we need to, as the system is starting to fall apart, it's no mistake that the energies are building each of us, our individual selves, up. So self-sufficiency is really very important. And it's like it's a crisis in action between the sun and Jupiter. So we're learning how to, one, believe in this truth, and then to be able to shine our light on what it is that we want to be able to do. Do we believe we can do it? And it can be a struggle to be able to get to that place. And I did, for this moon, I looked up the nodes of Jupiter. The south node of Jupiter is in Capricorn, and the north node, and this is about the past way of seeing the truth related to these cultural norms, because it's is it square? Yeah, it's square to the moon, but there's this past way of believing in what the societal norms have told us, and Jupiter's saying, nope, we need to pull that into ourselves, learn the truth through the way we personally gather the information, because we can be our own authority. This is what, Saturn is telling us. We're learning that what we see is just as important as the way somebody else sees it. And so with the South Node in Capricorn, we're coming from a place where all of our beliefs have been linked to what somebody else has told us. And the current Jupiter is telling us, no, we don't have to do that anymore. Now we can focus on what the truth is based on our own body and our own sense of self and our own needs and what we need, what we can draw towards us to survive in the future. And then the North Node is in Cancer, where we are aligning our truth to ourselves in the future. So we'll be shifting from this Capricorn, where it's been placed outside of us, to inside of us. And that's done through the current Jupiter in Taurus, by identifying what our needs are, expanding on that, expanding on our ability to really, I look at it as just being able to see the truth and then believe that truth and then create our reality based on that truth.
This is like all of that like gives me this big feeling that there's there's a big pressure relief happening, essentially. Like something's cracking within us, within society, and it's just going to erupt, and there'll be this big just like break, but it'll relieve so much pressure. And like that process can feel really uncomfortable until that crack actually happens and you're like, wow, like going to the chiropractor, right? Like you're all tense and stuff, and then the chiropractor moves you, and then you feel like your body is just opened up so much more. And it was like, and it's like sudden, right? Like the chiropractor will just like twist your neck, and it's crazy. And that's basically what Aquarius will do too, right? It'll just like be so sharp, sudden, like quick. And then all of this new space is like basically brought in. And so we can see that in our individual lives. We can see that collectively too, where you're talking about the Jupiter nodes causing this major big backdrop when it comes to like waves of humanity, like waves of how we're doing things. And then like it's trickling down in our own lives.
And this
And
is
it's
so
also
cool.
it's interesting that, you know, in the past we have, as you know, more distant past, but people have lived on this planet in a self-sufficient manner. We've just
Yes.
lost it and forgotten it.
Mhm.
And it's a matter of, as the, you know, the tides are starting to shift, we've gone from being totally dependent on a system that really can't support us.
Mhm.
And as it begins to dissolve, the pendulum is swinging backward to where we are learning to expand our way of survival through our own, first recognizing our own individual needs, which is what the last, you know, last year and a half has been about, is recognizing what our own needs are. And then now to be able to self-actualize that with Venus in Leo.
Mhm.
We're turning inward
Mhm.
and actualizing that we actually can get our needs met. And it's interesting, I was noticing that there's the finger of God between Pluto, Neptune, and Venus right now. So while we're talking about this societal norm and the rules and regulations that we've been taught to follow about how to live on this earth, and then the dissolving of that at the same time is pointing towards Venus, like coming into our own selves, while both of these things are kind of, the Neptune and the Pluto are kind of dissolving that. Everything is moving back into, you know, dissolving back into the oneness for the Neptune cycle. And, you know, we're losing meaning that we've lost meaning in our society, essentially. And the way to retrieve that meaning is to really come into the self, to come into relating to our own selves and finding what that is within inside of us and actioning that forward. And I think that's the antidote to this dissolving energy that we're living through right now.
Yeah, and this finger of God was actually already active during the new moon in Cancer. I had to get the luminations right. New moon in Cancer, but Venus was direct, and then that was still under Venus being the ruler of the North Node. So this is very important for people to understand, that Venus was the ruler of North Node when we had this last yod forming during the new moon in Cancer. And that was just before the nodes shifted, when Venus became the ruler of South Node. And now this yod is present again, and it will be present again when Venus goes forward. And Venus is now retrograde, and she's the ruler of the South Node. And another thing I wanted to bring to people's attention is that this new full moon is actually ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is squaring the Venus, as we already mentioned, and trying the ruler of the North Node. And actually, there is not quite, because Mars hasn't caught up yet, but there will be this grand Earth trine between Mars, Uranus, and Pluto at some point. There is already trine between Uranus and Pluto, and Uranus and Mars, just about, but Mars hasn't quite got there for it to be full-formed grand Earth trine, which is again Uranus being in Taurus and literally causing, in a sense, this shakes up in our life, where we reevaluating our priorities, our needs, our values, all that. Now, obviously, Jupiter is there. Jupiter is helping us with all of that. Jupiter is trining Mars. So I think this is so important to actually just have a compassion for yourself, for seeing, in a sense, your life to not physically fall apart, but just as Adrienne said, the meaning of your life until this point is falling apart, because it's losing the meaning, because this Uranus is breaking us out of this sleep, of sleeping beauty, of there being a story, there was a story that you have to listen to what you're being said. A good person puts themselves last. There was this story that was creating for us to keep us asleep, to keep us easy to manipulate. And now Jupiter is in the closing phase Uranus, saying, the time is up, guys. This story is irrelevant. This story is not going to support you. Saturn is in Pisces. There are so many closing phases, new phases, as usual, as they always are. But this is so important also with the Mercury being in a closing phase to Mars, the ruler of the North Node. We need to find a new story. We need to create a new story. And the story is about you being the creator of it, because you always have been. We just didn't know, because we were being kept asleep. We were being kept conditioned by trusting, like a children, trusting someone else. But now North Node is in Aries. It's saying you need to reparent yourself in a way. You need to become your own parent and your own leader and your own everything. Not saying that we won't need other people. We'll always need other people, because we are social creatures, right? We are interdependent, but you don't want to give the power to someone else to condition your life. So that's what all this stuff in a chart is happening. This is the bottom line, that we are moving into this new direction. Ready or not, we are going there. North Node is already in Aries. It's like, ready or not, it's happening. But in order to happen, it's just like having this, with all these retrograde planets. Now we have 5 of them. There will be 2 more, adding up in August. Mercury will go retrograde, Uranus will go retrograde, and then the day Venus will station direct in September, on September 4th, Jupiter will go retrograde. So we'll have at some point all of the planets apart from Mars, because Mars is busy. Mars is the ruler of the North Node. It's telling us we have to keep going. We have to keep going slowly, step by step, but we have to keep going. And I also feel that it's fascinating to me that the south node of Jupiter is in Capricorn, and Saturn is in Pisces. Again, it's about dissolving. All this got activated during the new moon in Cancer. That's where the nodes shift. That's where the rulership shift. And the North Node, you Adrienne said it, of Jupiter is in Cancer. To me, it blows my mind every time I look at the charts and how the planets support each other and each of us, like to give us the time, because nothing is just happening like this. There might be like this kind of moments in your life and shake things up, but the world is not going to change overnight. This is a process. Mars, as the ruler of the North Node, is in Virgo. It's a process. It's going to be taking step by step time. But one thing that everybody is aware of, whether asleep or awake, is that life is changing. Things are changing, and we have time to adjust to the situations. Just as Adrienne said, our ancestors did it. We can do it. We were just being put into coma, thinking that we have to depend on everyone else. And I am one of those people. It's not like I am relying on myself or anything, but more and more people start doing it, it will become the new norm. And this is the process that will take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's already in a process of happening. There are people like myself that are starting to be digital nomads. I don't have a home. I just move from country to country. That's one of the things, like we try not to get too attached to your one home, to your one person, to your one job, because things are continuously changing. And I think just the fact that people are starting to kind of become more comfortable with the unknown, because also this fear of unknown is actually a story we were being told, because if that was the truth, you will never get past being born, because everything the child is learning as a baby is new, everything. So everything is unknown. Look at their excitement, proper Aries, like, hey, let's do it anyway, So that's kind of where we're trying to get back to, like, actually. And another thing is, if there was a fear of unknown, we would be long dead. As a human population, we would be long dead, because there always had to be these pioneers, these Aquarians, as we've been saying, that, somebody has to be the one to break out of the, of the consensus, to be on the fringe. And then that fringe will become the consensus. And then that's how the cycle goes. That's how the story goes. But with this Jupiter being in a closing phase with Uranus, the story is ending. So what is the new story of you that you want to create? Because with Saturn being in Pisces, there is a deeper understanding that the external authority you were relying on is an illusion. It's an illusion. Like, we are all creators of our reality, we just didn't know it. So now we're starting to understand it, with the North Node being in Aries.
When you were talking about being a digital nomad and not having a home, and I thought to myself, you know, I call that home free. That sometimes not being attached like that gives you freedom to be able to do whatever,
Yeah.
you know, whatever direction that you need freedom to be able to take a new direction. And you know, if you're attached to all of these other things, it's very difficult to move. And I think that people are probably feeling some uncomfortability in these times of uncertainty. The more you are attached you are to something, the more difficult it is to move.
Yes.
And so this ability to become freer so that we can take whatever direction that we need to spontaneously, I think is a really important point to make.
And that's another thing that Uranus is helping us with, because practically all these material things we have are our prison of overmaking, because we are being, this is how the society is, you know, keeping us stuck, because it creates all this FOMO that people don't want to not be part of, like, oh, that person has a new iPhone, that person has this, look at this neighbor, they have a better car than you, and it's this continuous FOMO, you know, that is this externalizing that, but do I really need it? No, but you know, because everybody else has it, and all these things, all this addiction, you know, to having all these things, is what's keeping us stuck. Because then, you know, people kind of, when they get themselves in these situations, and then they go, well, how can I move away? I have all these things, I have all these cars, or all these whatever. And you know, this is literally, it's so cleverly made, this society, to literally keeps us stuck, you know, like it's so, like, literally, for me to observe. And I'm not saying, you know, I have my addiction to my crystals and my singing bowls and all this stuff, but in the end of the day, you know, do I really need any of that to survive? No, but I like it, you know. But it's like just not having all these big things to carry. It's making life easier to just move. But it's just, like, to me, so interesting to observe it from the higher point of view, you know, me with my Aquarius rising, and see how this has been built up. This is not something, again, that happened overnight, and that's why it's so hard to get out of it, because they tied all the, you know, angles and all the noose and everything so tightly that when you find out that you are stuck in a spider web, it's too late. But it's never too late. It's, again, the illusion of all making, but it's kind of like a lot of effort. But this is literally, like, we will see so many changes, and it's inevitable, it's coming, it's happening. And I'm excited, because I was born for this. I was born into the world where I felt like an alien. I felt like, what the hell, you know, this world makes no sense to me, and I don't want to participate. And now, actually, that the world is starting to shift, I feel like, great, let's do it. It's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna be easy. It's not like it's gonna just, we're gonna wake up and everything is perfect, because we created it. We need to fix it. But it's exciting, and I know more and more people are getting excited, even though they are insecure, because they don't know what's coming, what it's gonna look like, how we're gonna get there. But they fed up and sick and tired, and they had enough of the past. They had enough of it. They're like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And that's pretty much what we are in a process of happening, but it's a process.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that the universe is supporting all of it. You know, it's supporting everything that is happening for us. We're all being supported in, you know, anything can happen at any time in different parts of the world. You know, there are storms and all wars and all of this stuff, but ultimately we are supported not by the structures that have been put in place, but by our suspension in this world. And all the things that happen are, you know, helping us, one, to grow and evolve, but also to shift. We've completed, like you said, we're completing this story, and we can't grow anymore here. We have to shift out, and it's going to be, you know, we have all of this baggage that we have collected through this whole storyline for, I don't know how long we've been collecting all of these things and having this storyline, but it's coming to an end. And we're getting ready to create a new story. But I think what's the universe is saying is now that we've done all of this and we've seen what other people what it looks like when others are creating the story for you. You didn't feel free, you've become stuck. Now's the opportunity to really determine what it is that you need for your survival and to head in that direction. What do you feel in the heart, and go in that direction, and the universe will continue to support that, because I think that if you can see it and you can believe it, then you can create it.
For sure. And I just want to say one more thing, that actually, you know, how many of my clients, and you know, we are going through a huge purge as a collective, because we know we need to create space for this new energy to come in. So there is all this, you know, shit coming up, whether it's from us, from our ancestors, from anything, doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be yours, but there is so much stuff coming up, so much stuff for us to look at and, you know, heal and integrate and whatever, let it go. But I keep saying to my clients, and I totally resonate with that, I said, yeah, everything is falling apart. But in a sense, if somebody told you everything is gone, literally imagine you wake up, everything is gone, everything. And they tell you, okay, what do you want to create? There is a clean slate, there is a clean page. You have the opportunity, maybe for the first time in your life, where you actually have the opportunity to choose for yourself. And it takes a lot of responsibility. That's why Saturn is in Pisces. It says, well, don't look at me. You are your own creator. You have to take a responsibility. So it's a two-way process. It's not just that, oh, I want, you know, like I want somebody else to take care of this, but I want to be free. It doesn't work like that. In order to be free, you have to take a responsibility. And we already had this conversation about that. But in a sense, it's exciting, because if everything that got us to this point, which for majority people is not the sweet spot, let's just face it, majority of people are working the jobs they hate, you know, majority of population has financial problems, you know. So I mean, if somebody said, okay, I'm taking all your debts and everything away, people would be like, okay, then what am I left with? What you are left with your wish, with your opportunity, with your hopes, dreams and wishes. You can create whatever you want. And it's, yeah, do you believe you can? With the, you know, Jupiter in Taurus, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about the story that was projected onto you? You know, Venus being the rule of the South Node, Venus in Leo retrograde. You can just break out of it and create whatever the hell you want. It's up to you. It's not going to be easy, because you need to create the tools and have the sense of self-reliance and trust in yourself. But once you have that, who can conquer you? Once you know who you are, you trust yourself, you rely on your own self-sufficiency, not in a sense that, oh, I can create everything I need for myself, but you have the power to attract the right people, the right circumstances, the right whatever the hell you want. Like literally, you girls know, like before I left Mexico, I didn't even know how I was going to pay my rent next month. I didn't even have enough money in my pocket to pay my rent for the first month in Bulgaria. And, you know, and I just had to trust. When I left England last year, I quit my life, everything. I left with last paycheck from my part-time job, which was not much. And I did it anyway. And in a sense, sometimes you have to just do that, because if you stay stuck in a comfort zone, there is no growth anymore. So yeah, what is it that you're afraid the most? And maybe when you face it, on the other side of it will be the ultimate freedom.
Yeah. I feel like that resonates on a bigger scale and backdrop too, is like South Node, where's your codependency for certain things and situations. And that big question is when you remove yourself, and not everyone has to do this, right? But when you remove yourself from things, people, situations, jobs, all that, right? And you have to like sit with yourself. You have to really understand who you are without an attachment to any label or with the things that you have or the money that you have or whatever, right? It's like, well, who are you? And like continue to ask yourself that question until you remove all these layers. Well, okay, I'm a tarot reader. No. Who are you? You know? Oh, I am a mom, right? No, yeah, that's what you do. That's a part of your life. But like, who are you? You know, and that's really like that deeper core backdrop of what's going on astrologically with our transits, because with any tribal community, every single person in the tribe had their own role, and that's what made up the tribe, and that's what made up
Yes.
and so right, and so I feel like
Yes.
this like whole entire astrological backdrop that we're going through, especially with these nodes and stuff, is figuring out and preparing people for when Pluto really is officially in Aquarius for the long haul, is how are you showing up in the collective tribe of humanity.
Yes. Right on. You've said it. There it is. And then from there, with our own unique gifts and talents, we'll be vibrating our own frequency, and we will draw to us those people that can be instrumental in
Right.
helping us get our needs met. We'll come together in another form of community, not where it's been dictated to us, but where we are dictating outward what
Yeah.
we need and what we want to see happen in the world.
And you know, Adrienne, I have not been to one yet. I know that you've been to them. I have not been to them yet. Mila, I don't know if you've been to a rainbow gathering before,
No.
but isn't it much
Yeah.
like where the rainbow gathering is, they have the little camps and everyone provides for each other, right?
Yes, yes.
Camps like that.
Yeah, it's quite, it's, if you ever get to one, it's quite a unique experience of, yeah, I call it the ultimate Aquarian. You know, there are no leaders. There's no, I mean, there are traditions, but there's no particular rules. If a person wants to go and build, like one year I went and I decided, you know what, I'm going to create sprouts for the entire gathering.
Mhm.
And that's what I did for the 2 weeks that I was there. Every day I would fill 5 gallon buckets with water and put the seeds in them. And then it took me a few days to get it going, but then for the rest of the gathering, every week, every day, I would bring 5 gallon buckets of sprouts to the dinner circle to pass them out amongst people. It
Yeah.
was awesome.
Love that. Love that.
And that's the thing,
It's
you know,
fun.
everybody has a gift to offer, like
Mhm.
everyone. They just need to find out what it is, what is their strength, you
Mhm.
know, and that's this Taurus, like what is it that you can offer that is within you, that, you know, that it's not what you do, but who you are, that we each were born with a gift. We are all the piece of puzzle that creates the mosaic of the consciousness, but we all have a unique shape, a unique piece. So why would we want to do something that everybody is doing, where, you know, that which you're doing is exactly what's needed? So I think, you know, this kind of gathering are probably the opportunity for people to exactly express their Leo, that this
Mhm.
is what I want to shine with.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so like have fun, you know, like I know the astrology is like heavy sometimes, but like, we're in this period where we've got this like this Venus Leo cycle that's happening and the transits aren't too tough, right? So it's almost like go out and experiment and like and get to know yourself, like go dancing, I don't know, go on a few dates if you're newly single and just like test out the waters, right? Figure out like what you like and what you don't like and like who you are, just trying different things and then like come
Yep.
back to yourself, right? You
Yep. Be creative.
yeah.
Maybe you haven't picked up artwork in a while and get a chance to paint something, or, you know, work a lump of clay, or
Yeah.
pick up an instrument.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be creative, have a good time.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with especially being in Leo season, a bit playful. You know, we're going to have the new moon in Leo, and it's like, well, how do you want to play? Because I feel that, you know, especially sun shining onto Leo, like Leo is the stage, you know, and this really is a stage of life. And this is another thing that I keep mentioning, that, you know, you are the actor, you are literally the main star, you are the producer, scriptwriter, director, you are everything in your game. You decide what it is, what role do you want to play. And I feel that for a lot of people it's kind of like they kind of going that I don't want to play this role anymore, I want a different role, I want to try something different. You know, even with actors, they don't want to be assigned to a particular role, you know, just the rom-com actors or whatever, because they know it causes them to not grow anymore. They don't want to be put in this box. So, you know, let's just look at the theater, or let's just look at the, you know, okay, Hollywood is like, let's not go, you know, into the depth of Hollywood, but when you just look at the movies and how each actor usually gets sick and tired of a certain role they play, like, you know, like as I said, normally it's the rom-coms, that's the easy one to start with, but then like I want to do something different, you know, I want to be something that, but that's the same thing with you as a soul. soul. And I also say that we didn't come here to just play one role, because we are multidimensional being. We didn't come here just to be this one name, this one label in this one place. And I mean, maybe for some people this is what they still chose, but I feel this is something that we have done for so many lifetimes, when because of lack of resources, lack of information, there was no internet. It's not like there was so much conditioning with this dark age. So we already played these roles when you were this one thing to everyone in this one place for the rest of your life, and that's it. But I feel with this Aquarius age, and when things, as I mentioned, while Pluto was in the sign of Aquarius, when planets were going through the fire and earth sign, this is all about, like you said, creativity. Think outside of the box. You have all these different aspects to yourself which you want to express, because with the fragmentation, that was exactly why the trauma happened, because, well, there was obviously a situation that happens, we didn't have the tool to process, but also because we had to suppress certain aspects of ourselves because they were not being desirable or acceptable by our environment. So again, it was the environment that decided what is right and wrong. But what is right and wrong for you? So I feel that now, being in Leo season, and the torch, the God's torch, the universe torch, the sun is shining on the house of Leo, is literally, well, what role do you want to play? If you could choose, like, okay, well, I don't want to be poor mom anymore, I want to be whatever, then do it. Like, what can you do to play this role? And maybe just fake it till you make it, or visualize it, or whatever. Whatever. But literally, the only thing that is stopping us from achieving whatever we want to achieve is our belief system.
Yeah.
And now Jupiter is in a closing phase with Uranus in Taurus. So whatever you believed about yourself, it is not your story anymore. It's coming to the completion. So by spring next time, there will be a new story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
For sure.
I think this was great. What do
Me
y'all
too.
think? Yeah.
I definitely, I think that, just to reiterate, I think that while relationships are changing
Mm.
and breakups are happening, I think I know 6 different people that
Same.
have broken up. It's intense. There's a lot of breakups.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. It won't be that way for everybody. But I think what is most important in this is that we're changing the way that we have related to other people. And if the change can't be made in an amicable and balanced way, then the breakups may happen. You choose to go your own directions. But ultimately, we're all going to be learning to relate to each other differently, because now we are focused on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where that hasn't been the norm.
100%. Well said.
Yeah, and I mean, the only reason why people are breaking up is if their needs are not being met. And it's also because we externalize our power, that I expected you to fulfill my needs. But if people actually feel the desire to step away from a relationship, either break it or just take a break, it's because they're trying to find the way how they can meet their needs, so they're not dependent on someone else who then has the power over them. Yeah. So I really feel that it's exactly like, relationships are not going anywhere. We came here to experience relationship, like literally everything is relational and everything is transactional. So the shift, what is happening is that rather than for us to depend on someone else or manipulate in having our needs met, we are now going to internalize our power and step into our own inner authority, learn to set up boundaries, no more people pleasing, but actually, is this the right for me? And it's not, there is no right and wrong, but is this the right thing for me? And then we just create a boundary around it. And this is always changing, it's not like there is like a metal gate. It's just like a tree, so you just go, and you can always adjust it, whatever. But that's what I feel that, and I mean, I've been saying it from the beginning of the year, and it's not like I want to be profiting bad things, but I said that once the South Node moves into Libra, a lot of people will break up, because if people were together for the wrong reasons, or not even wrong reasons, but the reasons they were together dissolved, then, and there is no more growth happening, or they need to figure out who they are, before, like you said, before you become mom, before you become wife, before you become whatever, who are you? Who are you? And is this relationship allowing for you to be who you are, being authentic? Leo season, authenticity, but also being able to keep expanding, keep growing. And that's another trap of the society, the contract of marriage. Unless the same person grows in the same speed with you for the rest of your life, it's inevitable that at some point you might grow apart, because it requires for two people to be literally exactly on the same path, growing in the same speed. And that's how, again, the system keeps people feel trapped and ashamed and disempowered, because they make you feel like you failed. But did you really, or did you just grow apart, which is a natural cycle of life? So I
Yep.
really feel that with this North Node in Aries, it's about self-discovery, about a fresh start with regards to who you really are without everybody else being around.
Yeah. It's a personal choice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And it's possible. That's the thing. I watched my grandparents, my grandfather passed in June, at the end of June, and I saw that their relationship lasted over 60 years, which is incredibly rare right now, and I saw them
It is.
together to the end. And it is possible that too, but I've also seen how they've had to make compromises. And I think that's one of the things that we're learning with Libra, South Node and Libra as well, is like,
Absolutely.
compromise is not a negative term. It's just, you have to realize when the scales are going to be tipped, and it's going to be through that extreme imbalance right now. I think where people be readjusting what they're willing and willing not to compromise. And another way to deal with like relationships is to listen, like make sure you're listening to the other person. And this has to do with friendships, work relationships, lovers, all that. And so there will be an eruption or an extreme right there. But as long as you're grounded in who you are, you're able to receive what somebody else might need. And then you're able to have that Libra discussion, right? And that'll be supported with that Aquarius too, because it'll form that air trine, if you will, when Pluto moves back in. And so there's so much healing that can happen in relationships. And I think that's important for us to like recognize for people who are going through those changes, because the three of us are free in our relationship sphere right now, and we've already been through the heartbreaks. And so essentially we have a lot to teach people who are experiencing it now, because we've got some hindsight, if you will, when it comes to that. And that's again one of those major factors that really affects people in their immediate world, that can be debilitating, essentially. Yeah.
For
But
sure.
we're in Leo season, and so the opportunity to
Let's
be
have fun.
yeah, like let's have fun and embrace everything. So I guess we'll wrap this up. This is a great full moon report. I loved it. It was very spontaneous. Like we didn't really do a lot of chatting before, which I loved. So Adrienne, I know you have some stuff to share about your Substack and where people can find you for readings and your YouTube channel.
Yes, I have a Substack at Jess Karen Astrology, where I post my new and full moon reports. Also have started a subscription there, so I'm putting up some other content, and you can check that out. You can also, I've got a Facebook page, Jess Karen Astrology, where I'm also posting little bits. I'm getting ready to do some short reels and put them on, just about different alignments and little different parts of evolutionary astrology. And then, that's where you can find me.
Okay. Mila?
Yeah, same as before. It's all Moonlight Soul 369 on Instagram, Facebook, and I mean, you can find all my links on the Linktree bio. So yeah, it's all in Linktree. I don't have a website yet, but yeah, I'm pretty easy to find because I'm in most social media.
Yep. And the same for me, everybody. On my channel, the Scenic Root Astrology, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, I'm not very much active on, but if you want to contact me, scenicrootastrology.com. I have an oracle deck for sale, and make sure that you hit like and subscribe to all of our YouTube channels, and make sure you support our growth. It helps expand our channels grow and get this information out to other people. And if you feel like this is going to resonate for somebody specifically right now, as you're watching, please make sure you share it along with them as well. And leave us a comment if you want us to chat back with you about what's going on astrologically. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.